Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. A week ago, we had done a show on the question of lynching, on whether a new law was required to actually crack down on lynching and whether that was going to be the solution. And of course, in the period since then, the entire incident and the tragedy around Rakbar Khan and what specifically happened in that case, whether the police was guilty, whether they dawdled for a long time, whether they took him to the police station, has only added to the debate and the discussion around it. There's also been a parallel conversation happening in some areas which has been almost overtaken by some of the headlines, which is the entire question around the cattle trade itself. We've had Yogi Adityanath, for example, coming out and saying that the fact that there are no cattle slaughters, there are no abattoirs in Uttar Pradesh is one of the reasons why there is no lynching out there. Other people are saying that lynchings are also taking places in areas like Kerala, for example, which has nothing to do with the cattle trade at all. So maybe mob violence is the term that should be used and not lynching. And in the middle of all of this, we are also seeing some movement by the centre. Some of the people who've been asking for a new law, Masuka, for example, asking for a new law on lynchings, they have been called and they will be going to the Home Ministry over the next few days to give their thoughts on how we can crack down on it. And that is why we are back on this particular subject and taking a look at some of the broader aspects of it. How does lynching tie up with other issues around, for example, the rural economy? What happens with cattle? What happens with, is it tied to religious identity or not? Those are all some of the questions that we are going to try and arrive at this week. So let me start off by welcoming Tehseen Poonawalla, entrepreneur, activist, Congress supporter. One of the people who's been called by the Home Ministry to actually help in a discussion forward on how we can get a better law. So it's good to get you and your perspective on. Ajay Gautam, who's the founder of humhindu.com, feels that in many ways the Hindu community is being maligned in all of this. Would be interested in getting his views on this. Ambika Shukla is an animal rights activist who feels that the rights of the cattle and other animals need to be kept also in mind. There have been animal activists who on certain occasions have been accused of being involved in attacks and lynching activities. It would be interesting to get your view on that. Alison Saldana, it's a pleasure to get you on. At India Spend, one of the few groups which has actually done a lot of research and has data on what specifically is happening around lynching. So that data, Alison, will really help us understand what's happening on the ground. So it'll be wonderful to get your perspective. Avik Saha is a national convener of the Jai Kisan Andolan, and who will help us understand what's happening in the rural economy and whether that in some way is feeding into lynchings in one form or the other. And some continuity from last week, Raghav Avasthi joining us, lawyer and of course a supporter of the RSS. So good to get your views on as well. All right, let me just proceed by asking you, Tehseen. Look, what exactly is it that you're telling the Home Ministry? What essentially is it that you're telling them?
So they're also reaching out to me because I was the lead petitioner in the Honorable Supreme Court, and we made all these arguments for a new law in the Honorable Supreme Court, who in its wisdom considered and requested Parliament to look at the need for a new law. Now, Vikram, to take this discussion forward, we need to understand one thing. There is a slight difference between lynchings and mob violence. While both essentially are the same thing, a mob gathers and beats up people, lynchings happen specifically based on identity. The identity could be religion, and this is where I disagree with Yogi Adityanath when Yogi Adityanath says there's no lynchings in Uttar Pradesh. Over the last 1 year, there have been a number of lynchings in Uttar Pradesh of women, branding them as witches. That's also sexual identity. Transgenders, that's the highest number of lynchings. They are branded as sex workers and are lynched. Then migrant workers. The Assam lynching was not a religious identity lynching, but a lynching based on Assamese versus outsiders. So there's a difference between a lynching and a mob violence where, for example,
so mob violence is it's a road rage, you had an accident, you run over somebody, the crowd gathers and beats you to death,
true.
Or you're accused of being a thief,
yes,
and you're beaten up.
Yes.
Which sometimes happens in these WhatsApp-related lynchings. It may not be necessarily because you're ABC.
That's true.
It's just that a WhatsApp. That day you're an outsider who's coming.
Yeah, but again in the WhatsApp-related lynchings, you see there was somebody who was benefiting from those lynchings. For example, let's leave the religious aspect out or the cow aspect out. We'll come to it. The Assam lynching was about an Assamese identity versus an outsider, which fueled a passion. There is always somebody who's benefiting from this. There is somebody who's fueling this. Therein comes the problem. There's a difference between this and a road rage, for example, as you rightly said.
Okay. Raghav, I noticed you shaking your head violently while he was saying. What part of that are you disagreeing with? It sounds reasonably straightforward.
I do feel that when you make a law in order to prevent lynching or mob violence, then, and it's something that's a cornerstone of a constitutional jurisprudence to, structure it in a way as if, you're painting an entire community or members of a particular identity group as victims. I don't think that's done. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I did not. It's not about a religion. You can't make a law saying protect Muslims.
I did not interrupt
No, but you're factually wrong when you say that you're making a law to protect Muslims.
No, I'm not saying that.
Everybody understands that the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court in its wisdom,
thank you to allow me
the Supreme Court in its wisdom,
allow me to complete minorities. I have not completed.
Yeah, but you're factually incorrect.
I have not completed it yet. Let me come.
Let him finish what he said.
So the only point that I am trying to make somewhere is this, that if there is to be a law that is to prevent lynching, then it first of all has to be, it should not have anything to do with the identity of the victim. There can obviously be a statutory framework whereby you have these instructions to the concerned police officers that they have to take expeditious action in cases like this, and also certain preventive measures can also be engrafted onto the statute. Having said that, it cannot, such a law and the discourse around such a law should not be such as to promote or stoke a sense of victimhood on the basis of identity,
but
because that would be literally the thin
but hang on. Okay, as long as the principle is that no one should get lynched because on the basis of their identity, it's not specific to one.
Yes.
It's not saying that a Muslim being lynched is bad and somebody else being lynched
exactly.
is good. Anybody based on any identity.
The bone that I have to pick is not against Tehseen as such, but against some of his co-petitioners. I think we've discussed this. Some of his co-petitioners who argued in court and who talked ad nauseum about how it's Muslims who are being victimized or such other community that is being victimized. I think that just shows greater sense of
arguments were rejected.
Arguments which were rejected by the Supreme Court should not be allowed to come in through the back door when this legislation is being framed.
That won't happen, but I just want each one of you to imagine a woman walking on the streets of Delhi. A group targets her because a rumor spread that there's a sex workers on this area, and then the woman is lynched. This has nothing to do with identity or religious identity. Please understand, the most lynchings of transgenders, they are lynched day in and day out because they're called sex workers. They may or may not be sex workers. This is unacceptable.
If that is the principle of what is now being considered, what is your issue with that?
Actually, Tehseen is trying to paint a communal fabric by pertaining all this issue together with the religious entity.
If I am asked, on a pure, simple fact, that's exactly the opposite of what he just said. Exactly. He said, I'm just paraphrasing what he said, irrespective of the identity of the person, if somebody gets lynched because of that person's identity, it could be a Muslim identity, it could be a Hindu identity, it could be a transgender identity, it could be a female, it could be male, because of it could be an outsider. You're a non-Assamese, you're a non-Bengali. How is that communal?
But what kind of perception is going to make around the society? What is that? The Gaurakshak are the big problem, and they are the only responsible behind all this thing lynching. I am asking a very simple question.
Actually, in Kerala, somebody got lynched because of a cow. But yes, the Gaurakshaks are primarily.
Allow me, sir. What identity is behind the lynching of the Kartik Ghosh? Which identity is made in Malda and Purnia, at where the properties of Hindus set in fire?
If we are to reach the premise, as he says, that anybody there's an attack that happens based on somebody's identity, then your example, if in Bashirhat, Hindus are lynched or attacked because of their religion, then that's also covered, right? That should also be wrong. Let's be very clear on this. No one is saying it should only be for a minority or only for a male or only for a female or only for a transgender. Across the board, somebody gets killed in mob violence because of that person's identity. It is wrong. Hindu, Muslim,
if this
Sikh,
is a law and order problem, Vikram, if this is a law and order problem, which is a state subject, then why the Gaurakshas are grabbing in all these issues?
Because there are a large number of people. Hang on. No fault on their part. Whatever these people are doing, by the way, I don't think you don't have to rely on me to say what the Gaurakshas are doing or not doing. Here, for example, is what the Prime Minister of the country had to say a couple of years back as to what Gaurakshas are actually doing. And he calls many of them thugs operating in the name of Gaurakshas. In fact, I'll tell you what, let me just play that for you again. Here's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on what the Gaurakshas are doing.
मैं राज्य सरकारों को अनुरोध करता हूं कि ऐसे जो स्वयंसेवी निकले हैं, अपने आप को बड़ा गौरक्षक मानते हैं, उनका जरा डोजियर तैयार करो. 70-80% ऐसे निकलेंगे जो ऐसे गोरख धंधे करते हैं जो समाज स्वीकार नहीं करता है, लेकिन अपनी उस बुराइयों को से बचने के लिए ये गौरक्षा का चोला पहन करके निकलते हैं.
Okay, Alison, let me just turn to you now. So that we try and understand, look, we can keep talking in theory that, oh, this is happening, that's happening. We need data for this. India has been one of the few organizations that actually come out and put that data together as to what is happening. Help us to understand this. How many of the attacks and incidents are we seeing are based on what they're seen as calling identity? And of those, what percentage of them are therefore being done by Gaurakshaks as opposed to others? Yes, anecdotally we hear about other cases. As I was saying, in Kerala, people got lynched because they were suspected of stealing a hen.
There was one lynching in Badmer also.
There was lynching in Badmer also. I'm saying they are in lynches for other reasons also, but I'm just trying to understand. Let's just try to understand what the statistics and the data is. Alison, just help us understand the data.
Okay, so our database on cow-related hate violence is what we call it, because it is very apparent as more incidents are reported that it is motivated by bias. It shows that, so we've taken 2010 as the start year of our database, and it shows that since 2014, there have been about, in total, 88 attacks recorded so far. 98% of those have been reported after 2014. And we could say that let's not communalize the whole issue, but the fact of the matter is that Muslims account for 56% of those who are attacked, and among those who are killed eventually in these attacks, they are 88%. So you cannot ignore the fact, it's too big a statistic to ignore the identity of these victims. And also, apart from Muslims, Dalits from the other 10% to 12%. Between the two of these marginal and minority groups, you've got the entire, all the victims counted in. In fact, it's about 2 or 3 Hindus who have been killed in cow-related attacks. And if we are to look at child lifting related mob violence, which has particularly seen a spike since 2017. I mean, before 2017, we recorded just one incident in 2012. So we see from 2017 to 2018, there's been a phenomenal rise. In 2017, we had like about less than 10 attacks. And in 2018, we've recorded so far 69 attacks simply on rumors of child lifting. On rumors of child lifting.
Okay, Alison, just to understand, Alison, I want to interrupt you for a minute. I'm just trying to understand the data. So let me just understand you correctly. In cow-related violence, right, by the Gaurakshaks
right.
or the cow vigilantes, or call them whatever, horrible term you want to find, the numbers there you're saying are 56% of the people who have been attacked were Muslims and another 10% were Dalits. In child lifting related lynching attacks or mob violence attacks, was there any particular breakup that you could find?
Yes. So in out of the cases in many of the cases where they are only injured and not killed, we do not have the religious identity. However, among the people who have been killed, there are about 33 cases where we have the identity properly noted down. In 12 cases, it was Hindus. In 3 cases, it was Muslims. And in 16 cases, we did not have the identity noted down. We haven't got that. However, in all cases, these are what are perceptibly outsiders to the community or the mob that attacked them.
So one thing which is coming across clearly is that in most cases of lynchings or mob violence, there's a perception that they're the outsider. In the cow vigilante related incidents, again, you're saying that a majority, more than half
right.
of them are Muslims who are getting attacked. Are they Muslims from within the locality or from
right.
outside?
That has not been clearly identified in the news reports that form the crux of that form the basis of our database. But in a lot of cases, they may be Muslims from another area that may be simply transporting cows, or maybe seen near cattle and they are attacked.
I have a very quick response. Alison, now from what I understand, your entire study is based on news reports. It's not based on
right.
the data
because
that is
the NCRB does not collect data as it has told
it's based on news reports. So at best, I can say that it is anecdotal evidence. It does not qualify as statistical evidence. That's one. And the second and more important point, the second and more important
we have given a statistical perspective
what
to the
is the
rising number
statistical
of news
perspective?
reports
If the entire basis of your entire whatever study that you've done, and it has been cited.
But let's. I'm going to come.
It's just newspaper reports.
Stop.
So if it's not reported in the newspapers, it's not part of your study.
Okay, Raghav.
So let's just divide. Underreporting, not over-reporting.
Yeah, if you're saying that her data, which is saying that 88% of the people killed in cow-related violence are Muslims, is wrong, counter that with anecdotal evidence of the opposite.
As far as I am concerned, all that her entire report, this India Spend report, is based upon what is reported in the newspaper, what has been reported in the newspapers over the past 4 years.
Okay, it's a scientific compilation of reports based on whatever data there is.
Equally, I can say that since Narendra Modi came to power, the media has started taking greater interest in all of these incidents, which were happening much earlier. I mean,
okay, just that, by the way, is a possibility. Hang on. That's a possibility. Alison, let me just ask you that. Is that a possibility if, because the data is coming from media reports, and obviously the media is focusing a lot on any cases of lynching and mob violence, it's the same argument as is sometimes made about rape, for example, or other crimes, that as more attention is, or air pollution, as more and more attention, media attention is paid to something, it tends to get reported more. Maybe the incident earlier which just got buried in, in mob violence statistics.
They've done this survey.
You asked a question, let her answer, then I'll come to you. Yeah, I need to come to Ambika also. Alison, is that a possibility?
The entire point of this database is to make the state see the patterns that are emerging. If the NCRB collected data on lynchings, we would not need to do this. The point of creating this database was we increasingly saw more reports. And it's not like it has reduced over the years since then. We are only seeing more and more attacks of mob violence growing, in fact.
Alison, for the sake of intellectual honesty, you should have added a caveat then. You should have added a caveat. You should have added a caveat.
Then I'm sure that the media would have reported it. If not, still the state needs to take cognizance of the fact that there is a pattern that is emerging.
That's why I'm asking to her, did you study how many police officers has been murdered by the hand of goat tuskers?
May I reply to?
Please, sir, this is the important fact. I have the data. I have the data. How many police officers murdered by the hand of goat tuskers? In how many
Okay,
states?
hang on.
Is this the part of your study or not?
So we haven't recorded that data because cattle smugglers operate from are not motivated by bias to commit those crimes, and nobody is even in the sense that they are motivated by theft or greed, and nobody is sort of giving them a sense of impunity. There are no ministers who are coming out in support and saying that this is what should be done or garlanding them when they are released from jail.
Just need to put this in perspective.
Pause.
You have data, Alison, or not?
I'm sorry.
Gentlemen, one second. Can I get Ambika, just look, this is not about.
If she has no data with regard to the police officer,
if you have, okay, fine, why don't you give me the data? It's not. Alison is not
exposing her statistical details.
Hang on, wait a minute. Alison has a set of data, right, which she's putting forward. If you have other data, please feel free to put it out.
I'd like to.
Yes.
Why don't you?
Maybe
I'd like to.
Yeah, but before you come, I'll give you time to find your data. In the meantime, Ambika, can I just ask you?
Well,
help us understand this entire thing.
Yes.
Avik may have a different view. Let's
like
understand what's happening in the cattle trade.
I'd like to
Seeing as a lot of the lynchings are linked to the cattle trade.
Which is most unfortunate. Because animal activism, by its very definition, is opposed to violence. Violence against the weakest, any kind of exploitation and any kind of cruelty. So it's really, really sad to see the cow, which is the gentlest and most giving of all animals, to be linked in any manner to any kind of violence. Animal activism is not about violence. We oppose it. We oppose it in any form. We oppose it to animals and all animals equally, whether it's ducks, whether it's birds, whether it's peacocks, whether it's cows, whether it's any kind of animal doesn't deserve violence. So firstly, all violence is to be condemned. Why is it occurring in this manner is what we need to understand. Cattle smuggling is illegal under the law. Cattle smuggling occurs mainly at night. It occurs mainly under the law. You are allowed to transport 4 adult cattle in one truck. What happens normally under the cover of darkness, up to 60 cattle are smuggled in a single truck. There are 20, they're in 3 layers. The bottom layer is completely crushed and dead, suffocated. The middle layer have their legs broken, their hooves twisted, they're tightly tied. Their hooves have gone into somebody, they're blinded. The top layer is just barely alive. And it is these mobile concentration camps, literally, that moves under the cover of darkness, under tarpaulins. When they are caught, there are 60 cattle that are out of which barely 4 or 5 are still alive. We've unloaded these trucks. They come to our shelters, and we've unloaded them, and we found they are just thrown into the trucks, and when they are dumped, they're brought out, their backbones are broken, they cannot stand, their legs are broken, they are blinded. You should see them. It is no human being can tolerate such cruelty and unnecessary. If they were to take 4 cattle like the law permits, they would not be breaking any law. They would not be inviting any kind of outrage. But what is the outrage against? Is this cruelty to a helpless animal, which is unnecessary?
So
the law
I think your point is,
transport them civilly. But why are they transported in this fashion? When you transport something that has any value for you, that it should reach in a good state, you will transport. If I was transporting a glass, for example, that had a value to reach in its intact state, I would transport it with care. But because these cows are being treated for slaughter, and that is why it's evident that they are being taken for slaughter, they are being taken in a manner that is any which way. You just want to cram the maximum in to save transport costs. You don't care.
Getting worse?
You don't
Amika,
care whether they reach dead or alive.
I think you're right. It's a problem, and it's a problem which needs to be addressed, because it's a problem that needs to be addressed. The fact that there is a slight sense of fear over the entire cattle smuggling trade right now because of these various attacks isn't making the problem worse. That people don't want to be seen transporting cattle for whatever purposes. I mean, the transporting of cattle is not illegal.
It's not illegal. 4 to a truck. 4 to a truck, you're perfectly, allowed to take them. 4 in a manner that doesn't cause them suffering. Now, you asked about statistics about the opposite side, where people who've tried to intervene and save cattle, whether it's policemen, whether it's farmers whose cattle are stolen. Lots of these people who are the victims are farmers. There have been young girls, there have been professional women who've been attacked. Let me give you just a few. I have a whole sheaf of them. There have been up to 37 incidents where people have been killed in these incidents, and up to 60 where they've been injured.
May I reply to it? I am absolutely on board with Ambika, but there are 2 basic problems. These arguments were made in the Supreme Court. Please understand one thing. This whataboutery cannot work. When there is stealing happening, you are not stealing based on identity. You're stealing because you're a thief is stealing. Those who are preventing the thief, you're not attacking them because of their identity. You're attacking them because they're stopping you from doing something illegal. It's wrong. But that's not based on identity. That can be mob violence. Lynching is you base and you attack somebody based on identity. And I'll just end with her example. Pehlu Khan from Haryana had gone to Rajasthan, a government fair. He bought government certified cows, and he's a dairy trader, had only 3 cows in his truck, was going back, was stopped by a Bajrang Dal mob and beaten to death. He was from Haryana. He doesn't know their names. He heard them shouting each other. For example, Vikram is Kumaro, Raghav and Kumaro. He gives out those names and the police refuse to take action and they make him the criminal. Now, when you buy, and therefore your larger question, is this affecting the dairy trade and the other trade? Yes, it is. Because even when you're buying legitimate, as she says rightly, legitimate, certified animals from a government certified fair, and you're still beaten up for identity. In Pehlu Khan's case, it was for his Muslim identity. In other cases, it's for women identity. That is wrong.
Okay.
Nobody
gets your point.
What happened in Junaid case? Junaid case also, they try to connect with the mob lynching on the name of the beef and all this thing. And the Honorable High Court of Haryana and Punjab candidly said there is no connection between the mob lynching and the beef and anything. Every incident, they just grab every incident in the light of the Gauraksha and all this thing. And sir, one more thing. You asked me about the data. Haryana police arrested Tawfiq and his associated dated 30 June 2018 in connection with the murder of Sub-Inspector Raj Singh. And Raj Singh was murdered by the cattle smuggler in 2016.
That's terrible. I hope he
I have so many data. We have more than 5 police officers has been brutally
Okay, so
murdered
you're
by
saying
the
5.
cattle smugglers, but nobody has there to talking about them.
Okay, we're talking about it just right now, and I think it's a valid point you're making. If a cattle smuggler is killing a police person, that person should be punished, should go to jail, and should be punished just as any other.
Sir, how can, sir? How can? Sir, ये देखिए ना, आप ही के अखबार का छापा हुआ है।
मेरे पास कोई अखबार नहीं है, सर, मैंने आज तक अखबार नहीं छापा।
वो कशी पकड़ने गई पुलिस पर पथराव और फायरिंग. This is the actual situation on that on ground zero.
You said
somebody is going to stop.
Okay, look, let's not.
Cattle smuggler. With regards to the slaughtering of the cows.
This is why Aniston's data becomes important. It's not as if you're having mass rioting every day.
Tricolor on these people. Has any union minister invited them home
Can I
and
just
pin out their bala?
What
Seen
about
those people? No, there was no video evidence against those who were garlanded.
Okay,
That's
so
why
look.
You have to read the
Can you guys, can you all understand what you're doing out here?
Granted by the
Please,
Honorable High Court of Jharkhand.
Mr. Gautam, Tehseen, Raghav, please, guys.
No union minister has placed a tricolor on these people. No union minister, I can do what I want. No union minister.
We are digressing. Avik, can I turn to you? Can we have the mics down here? Look, what about...
We are the soft target in this
it's
country,
okay.
so everybody targeted us.
Ajay, Mr. Gautam, you're not a soft target by any stretch of imagination. Please don't imagine yourself to be a soft target. You're not a soft target in this studio, let alone being outside. So let's not, one second. Now, I think Ambika's point is something I want to just return to. What is happening in the cattle trade? Because look, what about, you can continue. Oh, it's this person was lynched. Why didn't you say anything about that person being lynched? That person killed a policeman, so therefore it's okay. That person killed somebody because of a hen. All of this is wrong. Anybody being killed is wrong, and we have to try and find an answer to it.
Cattle.
I can't understand why that's so difficult to comprehend. Mr. Saha, just want to turn to you now. The point that Ambika was making about the cattle trade specifically, and the fact that it is directly linked to people getting angry because of the way in which the cattle are being transported. Is that what your data is finding, and what are the farmers' views on all of this?
Carrying cattle in cruel conditions is bad. I don't think there can be an argument about it. For the farmers, the only issue is the agrarian economy. I'll just give you one data which explains it all. 3.4 crore male calves are born in India every year. Let's say they have an average lifespan of 8 years. That's 27 crore calves in 8 years. The upkeep cost is 5.4 lakh crore rupees. Who is going to pay this cost? That answers the question. You see, for the farmer, the agrarian economy itself is largely dependent on recycling of cattle. And that's something which the governments have to understand. It's not a question about Hindus, Muslims, a ruling party, opposition. It's a pure question of economy, and the economy today is in shambles. There is a corollary cost. If you go across Uttar Pradesh today, Haryana today, almost all fields have to be now fenced with barbed wire because of stray cattle. It's become a huge problem. The farmer whose margins are already under pressure, who's reeling, it's a losing proposition to be a farmer, is being mounted with greater and greater costs, input costs of farming. Who's going to bear this? This is the issue that needs to be addressed. Let's not make it a political issue. It's an economic issue, and the farmers are really suffering because of this. I think BJP, Congress, and everybody in this game has to understand this.
I think this is a really important point. I want to spend 5 minutes discussing this, so let's leave the politics out of it for a moment. Ambika, answer this, because this is one of the questions that is arising.
What nobody is calculating is the value of the cow alive. Whether it's your male calves, whether it's the female cow, the dung itself is hugely important. It is used for fuel. It is used in all sorts of ways. Why are we using pesticides and chemical fertilizers? The cost of chemical fertilizers is far higher than cattle dung. If you just use cattle dung, not only do you have organic and safe crops, you do not have the expense of why do farmers get into debt? Because of expensive fertilizers and pesticides, and they ruin the soil. So you have to replow that same soil, which could have been kept fertile and wonderfly productive if you just used our traditional
Okay,
methods of cow dung.
let me ask,
You use the
Tessin, before I
urine
come
for
to Let me
pesticides.
just get Avik and Ambika.
You use the urine for pesticides. Why are
Let
milk
me ask
prices?
Avik Saha as to why that's not happening.
Vikram, one sec. Why are our milk prices spiraling? Because of the dearth of cattle. If you look at our numbers of cattle have gone down sharply, and these are statistics that can be proved.
Actually,
Unfortunately, I
milk
haven't brought
production in
them.
India is not down.
No, your prices of milk have gone much
Why
higher.
prices are going up, but milk
No,
production in
because
India
the
is
milk
not down.
production No, milk
Okay,
production.
These
the
are
prices
not
I'll come to
of milk-
Tessin. He's right. He's in the dairy business. Avik, just answer what she's
The
saying.
milk
that
prices
she's
have
saying
gone
that
up
even for a
highly.
male, Amika, yes, female cows give milk, which is an added economic benefit. But even male cows, she's saying that the
Use
cow
dung,
dung
yes.
should by itself be enough to justify, keeping that animal alive.
Yeah, she's absolutely right about the benefits of organic farming. But let's look at the government's policy on this. The government wants villages to use LPG. There's this much touted scheme. So how are you going to use dung as cooking fuel? You are selling tractors as a policy. How are you going to use male bovine for plowing?
No, so realign
So
the
there is a
policies.
complete
It's not that the,
mismatch in what you're saying.
A burden. You just realign your policies.
I'm coming to that. I'm
accommodate the
coming to
cow.
that. I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that.
Yes.
Please understand, the policy is set by the government. The government has a non-organic push. Let's understand the largest fertilizer producers in the country are government enterprises, public sector enterprises. So that's one policy, and here is another policy, and the farmer is being crushed in between. That's the point I'm trying to make.
So let us look
It's
at
the
those
same
policies.
government,
The
same ruling party which wants to protect the cow, and the same ruling party which wants to sell inorganic fertilizer.
So, in addition to mob violence and anger and hatred, that if there is any economic factors behind this, we need to understand
One
it to
more-
get a
one more
holistic
point.
understanding.
One more
Tessin,
point.
you're in the dairy business. You're in the dairy business.
We
Now, hang on.
started off as my family, my mom's family started off in the dairy business.
And please don't say the milk price is going up.
Yes.
My
That's ridiculous.
grandfather started
Yes,
dairy in
and
India.
So that's why I'm getting only the experts. All of you understand the dairy business because, Ambika, just on a point of order, but you were saying that India is suffering now in milk production. Actually, just a year ago, I think.
No, our
hang on,
prices
just a
are
year
much
ago,
higher.
Radha Mohan Singh said that India
There is a
leads in
glut.
milk production
There is a
in the world.
glut.
So that's not necessarily
Why
a
are we?
problem.
Why
We
got
are
spurious
overproducing milk.
Vikram, why have we got
Now
spurious
we'll
milk?
adulterate
Why is
stuff.
milk being adulterated?
We're
Because
going
there is
to
an
areas that
essential
is not to do
shortage.
with.
I'm just saying,
There's no
statistically, there's no shortage of
There's no
cattle in
shortage.
India,
There's
not
no
right now.
shortage.
Look, I will give you the statistics. I will send these to you.
We should
I'll give these to you.
probably warrant some more scientific
I will
debate that
give
we
you
can
the
have out here.
statistics on this.
Alison, maybe you can help us in getting some of this data out at some point. The state
Yes.
of the cattle trade is
Yeah.
your next assignment,
May I
Alison.
make Ambika ji's data is absolutely correct that there is spurious milk, but there is, but that doesn't coincide with the government data that the milk production is the highest. That's a criminal activity. You may still have good quality milk, and you choose to make the milk to tamper with the milk.
Why would you
That's
need
a separate. That's a separate issue. That's not to do with this issue. Let's not confuse issue and whataboutery. The fact of the matter is, as the speaker before me rightly said, the upkeep of these bovines or calves costs about 5 lakh crores. There is no data to show organic farming is more beneficial than 5 lakh crores. And the point that he was making is what I wanted to make. That ultimately your largest fertilizer company is a PSU. Please shut it down, make people jobless. But that's a policy decision you need to take. You cannot be putting people, and the reason we got out of this business is early on, and I'll just give a very practical example. A buffalo would cost about 35,000. You then, when it finishes its utility, you sell off the buffalo, you get about 14,000, and you buy another buffalo.
Okay.
Today you can't do that. The entire economy is in tailspin.
Okay, so
Now there is
Ambika-
no beneficial. There's no
Ambika, hang on. Before I go to Alison, so I've just sort of quickly been sort of trying to flip through and get some data on this. So the interesting thing is that, yes, milk prices have gone up per litre, but milk production is actually up. It was 51 million tons in 2016-17, up to 53.7 million tons in the summer of 2017-18. So it's not that milk production is falling.
But
That's
if you're saying that the cows are expensive to keep, why are you reproducing them, and who is reproducing them?
Okay,
Only
so
the
whether you
commercial
should have-
interests.
Okay, so
the government talks from Ajay is wearing a leather belt, and he says cow is our martyr. He's wearing a leather belt.
I'm not wearing a leather belt.
On your hand, the boy.
Where?
No, I mean, watch. It's leather. I mean, at the end of the day, the government has stopped
This is from the Rexy.
Acha, Rexy. The government is at the end of the day. The government is at the end of the day.
can check.
Yeah, we can check this.
check
I mean,
whether
you
that's
can guys
Rexy or
check
leather.
this. At the end of the day, government Tom's leather export.
I'm glad
And
he's
you say, but
returned your watch, so that's one less thing to fight about on this episode. All right, Alison, you were wanting to come in with some data on this.
So I just wanted to counter this data about cow smuggling and the ill treatment of cattle. Of course, we all agree that animals should be treated better. But does this actually justify the kind of mob violence that we are seeing?
It's not even justification. Nobody justified violence.
Yes, but at the same time,
No
in the same
violence is
breath, you are
justified.
also talking about how
We are just saying there's violence on either side.
Why not you
It's
stop
all of it.
action which
All of it.
outrage the sentiments of the largest community
all
in this
violence.
country?
Leather belt
You
watch.
stop the action, we
Alison,
stop the reaction. This
stop
is
wearing
very
a leather
simple.
belt watch.
This
All
is very
violence
simple.
is
You
condemned.
stop the action, we stop the reaction.
Stop.
Unacceptable.
If somebody is happening before my eyes, then what I have to do?
You're wearing a leather belt watch and you're giving
No.
gyan on cow protection.
Ajay Gautam,
Make
okay.
a point,
Ajay
please.
मैं
Gautam,
उसका लकड़ी का
how is-
जूता पहनने लग जाऊं क्या करूं बताइए
Exactly.
लकड़ी का जूता होता है
This is the
लकड़ी का जूता होता
But
है
he's not wearing one. That is the hypocrisy.
You could wear
that I
jute
see.
This is not a
That is-
hypocrisy.
This is the hypocrisy.
This is the Rexy.
How did the
This is the
oh,
Rexy,
please.
not
You guys can
leather.
get it. Even
Okay, I
Raghav
just like
said.
to make my point.
You guys
whether
can get it.
anybody
I was
is
speculating.
listening.
Ajay Gautam, can I just say one thing? Hang on.
मैं ये
It
कह रहा
is
हूं
not
सर
Alison's
if
responsibility.
something is happening before my eyes then what I have to
Then
do
stop being a
Beat the
hypocrite.
person to death.
No,
Is
we are
that your
not
answer?
hypocrite. We are not hypocrite. We moved an application.
to be
We moved a
Ajay
application
Gautam-
for the Supreme
Ajay
Court
Gautam-
and give the
Ajay
data
Gautam.
where the BJP is ruling. We silent and our tongue was paralyzed about the data of the state like West Bengal, like other state where the other parties are ruling. कार्तिक घोष का डाटा दिया था आपने अपनी पिटीशन में सुप्रीम कोर्ट में बता दीजिए
Okay, Ajay Gautam
बता
ji.
दीजिए ना सर मैं
Ajay Gautam ji.
पर्सनल नहीं
Ajay Gautam ji.
आता पूछिए इनसे
बता दूंगा.
बताइए कार्तिक घोष का डाटा
Let's get back to
था
politics. I'll make everyone happy, but allow me to get back to politics for 2 more minutes before it stands to somebody
In my
I want to respond to Alison. I want to respond to Alison.
in my
they've
petition,
seen the new.
I mentioned all
No, I'd like
states
to
in the
first
Union
make
of
my
India.
point before you
Unless
respond
Ajay
to
Gautam
it.
thinks West Bengal is not a part of the Union of India or Kerala is not a part of the Union of India, every single state of India
Did
was
you
made a party.
did you mention
Every
lynching of
single
Kartik
state-
Ghosh?
Every single state
started
was...
off by saying that actually.
And I started off by saying, and in my oral submissions and written submissions, I said nobody should be mentioned. The oral submissions, Sanjay Hegde said not even an RSS worker should be lynched, which they say not even a Hindu, not a Muslim, not a Brahmin, not a Dalit, not a man, woman, transgender, not an animal lover, not an animal hater. I don't know how much more can I be more specific. Nobody should be lynched, period.
But that's
We cannot
common
have
sense.
water
A few
boundaries.
questions to
And he's
Alison.
wearing a leather
I
belt
want
and
to
giving
ask
me
a few
lectures
questions
anymore.
of Alison.
We have not.
Can
this
I,
is not
one sec.
leather.
Can Alison make her point before you ask her the...
I want to ask the question.
Okay,
she
ask
can
her
make
a question, then she'll
thereafter.
reply, yeah.
No, can I first make my point, please?
Okay, Alison, first make your point.
Okay, no, so I understand that you're saying that you don't justify, you aren't coming out in support of violence when suspected cow smugglers are attacked. But according to our database, about a third of these incidents, the victims are suspected of being smugglers. The rest of them are innocent people who are just walking with cows, and they have been attacked by groups. They've just been probably transporting a cow or something else. They've been completely innocent.
इनका कहना है या किसी का भी कहना है अगर किसी का भी कत्ल होता है हिंदू हो मुसलमान हो सिख हो ईसाई हो ट्रांसजेंडर हो मैं इन्हीं के वर्ड्स को पैराफ्रेज कर रहा हूं वो कैसे कम्युनल हुआ किसी की भी हत्या खराब है आप उसको मानते हैं कि नहीं मानते
बिल्कुल
मानते हैं ना
बिल्कुल
तो ठीक है फिर वो कम्युनल नहीं है वो स्टेटमेंट करना कम्युनल नहीं है ना
यतो यतः समीहसे ततनो अभयम कुरु शन्नः कुरु प्रजाभयो भयन्नः पशु भयः सुशांतिर्भवतु इट्स अ श्लोक फ्रॉम द शुक्ल यजुर्वेद माध्यन्दिनी शाखा which said कि we have the responsibility to protect our cow गौ माता and
We
all
also have a
animals.
responsibility to protect
Everybody
other
has the
humans,
say,
right?
सबको
Nobody is
दर्द होता है
saying-
सबको
But with the
तकलीफ
शिवसेना
होती है
से-
सर आप अगर बोलिए ना गाय की आंखों में हरी मिर्च डाल देंगे ताकि वो खड़ी हो जाए उसके सींग आप तोड़ देंगे गर्दन तोड़ के पैर तोड़ के एक डिक्की में जैसे मेरे पास फोटोग्राफ है आप तीन गौ माता को एक डिक्की में डालकर लेके जाएंगे और आप कहेंगे कि सर इसको देख के मैं वेट करूं मुस्कुराऊं
अच्छा मैं आपकी बात मान लीजिए आपकी बात सही है कि लोग
And the
गुस्सा हो
smuggling
जाते
happens
हैं
every
somebody
night,
loses
Vikram.
their temper if they see a cow being transported in that
But it
thing,
happens
they get
every night
angry
in the
and they attack
hundreds
the
and
person
thousands.
all right as she says in a majority of the cases it is a single person walking with a cow not putting green chilies in the cow's eyes,
I
breaking
want
off
to
the
ask
horns.
questions as to the
Frankly,
veracity
even I
of
would
this
get angry,
study.
not just with a cow, with anything. If I see somebody doing that with a cow or any other animal, a dog, a horse, any animal,
Yes.
somebody I see ill-treating it, I will get angry. I will get
Yes.
upset. Most of us would.
Can I- Yes.
But in some of these cases of lynching, that's not the case. That's the point Alison is trying to make. It's for some other reason.
I want to
Raghav.
ask one question of Alison Saldana. She has been giving us some normative gyan. Let's leave that aside. I want to ask her one thing. She says that her data is compiled through newspaper reports, right? So, is she, when she says newspaper reports, does she refer to newspapers that qualify as national media or local media or regional media?
Yes.
Can she say, can she
National
tell
media.
us? One, I'll ask all of the
But she
questions.
can only tell you if you allow her to now reply.
I'll complete my set of questions. This is one question that I want to ask. The second is whether this study covers the vernacular media. The third is whether this study covers web portals that might be accredited. And there are many web portals that
By the way, a lot of web
operate at
portals have fake news.
operate
So
at
let's
a
be
local
clear.
level who are quite reliable. So these are some of the questions that she needs to answer. The second question is something that I want to put to Mr. Saha. If he says that there is such an economic imperative as far as the farmers of this country are concerned, that they want to dispose of all of their cows, then why is it that there is no groundswell of support against repealing of anti-cow slaughter legislation anywhere in the country? I don't see that at all.
Okay, that's a good
when
question.
there is-
Okay, one second. Good question, good question. Let me try and get answers to both of you.
So we use English media and we only use national media reports. We haven't
English
used
media,
the
only
national
national
media
media,
because
good.
English media has the largest spread and it's pan-Indian and also it's not restricted by regional linguistic boundaries. And also it's more easily verifiable and therefore you can't question the data. You can't question an NDTV report, you can't question an Indian Express report as much
I'm
as you
saying
would
that
if
there
I
might
had to
be
take a
other
Facebook
reports that
page,
might be equally reliable that
post,
you've
or if
not
I
gone
had to take a
into.
Twitter
What
post
is
about
the
She's
it.
using
problem
absurd
here?
now.
What
That's
is the
This is
problem
not a
here?
program
Our
on-
Honorable Prime Minister also misleaded by these kind of data. When on the 6th August 2016 at Town Hall, when Prime Minister made a statement that there is a 80% Gaurakshak
I would just
are
like to point out
involved
also
in
that
illegal
experts in the past
activities.
who have
I
studied
invoke the
communal
provision of
violence
ITF.
in
Please
India.
allow me
Mr.
10
Gautam,
seconds.
okay, Mr. Gautam, we've been hearing you at no...
10 seconds.
We've been hearing you virtually non-stop. Can I get somebody else
Sir,
in for
sir,
a
10
minute?
seconds only, sir. I will complete
10 seconds.
myself.
I'm
10
watching.
seconds.
Yet he's
I invoke
Always.
the provision
Yet
of
he's scared.
RTI and asked to the Prime Minister office, please show me the data on which basis Prime Minister said the 80% Gaurakshak are involved in illegal activities. This is when Prime Minister office replied by RTI 3751-2017 PMR A121 by the Upper Sachiv. Mr. Parveen Kumar, there is no data available on which basis we said 80% Gaurakshak are involved in illegal activities. That's why I'm saying
not the Prime
this kind of
Minister. Can you
misleading
ask the
data-
Prime Minister?
This kind of misleading data not affect to a normal person. Even our Honorable
Fine.
Prime Minister also confused.
All right, fine. Can I
Alison,
just-
one last
I
question.
just want to get...
Alison, the Turkman
This
Gate
is
shooting,
not
the
about
Turkman
you
Gate
and
massacre
Alice.
was not reported in any newspaper. Are you going to say that it didn't happen?
This is the Raghav and
It's
Gautam
absurd.
show.
Please feel free. Alison's got a set of data. If you don't like her data, come out with another
No,
set
but
of data.
the bias
of your
in her
own.
data
We will
also has
hear
to
it.
be called
We
out.
We will hear it. We will hear it. Now, can I just come to a substantive
It's not
point
the
that you
bias
made?
in the data, it's what's reported.
Reported exactly.
Okay.
Reported
Are
only
we-
in the English language
This
media.
is not... Can we get back to the
Because the
discussion?
government isn't keeping
This is not a
the data.
discussion on
Because
India's
you're studying,
spending, whether you
you're
like the
studying
data or
not
not.
worth the paper that you
Raghav,
used to
this
print
is
it.
not a program on India's
I
spending,
cannot
whether you
speak
like
if
the
everybody's
data or
going to
not.
interrupt
This
me.
is a program on lynchings and mob violence and how we can stop it. So can we please come back to that? Let's not attack or shoot the messenger. Let's try and figure out what the
bias
actual
messenger.
issue out here is. Now, one sec. You made another point to Avik, which is a good point. Let me ask that point to Avik. Mr. Saha, the question being, if there is so much rural distress that is coming, why isn't there pressure for changing or repealing or amending the cow slaughter laws? Because logically, that's what should be happening if what you're saying is correct.
It's a great argument of obfuscation, but it misses the point. The point is, leather trade in this country has been historically concentrated at certain geographies. Bovine population exists all over the country. So let's say Haryana, which is not an important leather center, has old cattle. It simply transported it, and Kanpur, Calcutta, Chennai, these were the places where the cattle was processed for leather. Look at the double speak. BJP, under Make in India, has ambitiously announced 100% FDI in leather,
Yes.
has set a target, export target of leather from $5 billion to $9 billion, and it's the same BJP which says that cattle can't be slaughtered.
That's not what the BJP says, Mr. Saha. You don't
multiple
mislead.
messages?
These legislations are enacted by the Congress party, sir. So please don't be upset.
Let's
Okay,
not,
one second. One of the cost total, okay, fine. I think
I'm
we
talking
actually-
about the Make in India.
Exactly.
You were
I
saying
think
that
we
the BJP
probably-
doesn't want cows to be slaughtered.
So the question of cow slaughter laws, by the way, is something we may want to come back and have another big fight on. We should remember, by the way, a lot of people have debated this right from the time of independence. Mahatma Gandhi, I'm sure you know what Mahatma Gandhi said, I have long pledged to serve the cow, but how can my religion also be the religion of the rest of the Indians? So this is a subject that has been under debate. Can I just get a couple of quick views from the audience before we wrap up the show?
Funnily enough, my name is Raghav Gautam. My question is to Mr. Poonewala. Sir, on behalf of the country, I would like to thank you for going to the Supreme Court and petitioning for this very cause. My fundamental question to you is, what next? I mean, what do we do against this violence? Because this is something that the country should be united for, and they should come together and not debate amongst each other. What next are we supposed to do?
That is such a good comment. I'm going to get everyone to answer that as their closing comment on the show. Let me get one more comment from the audience, then I'll get everyone to answer.
So my question is to you as well, because you talked about identity-based lynching and how detrimental that can be, like, for the future as well. So, like, when you find the keepers of the law, the police itself sometimes not taking stringent actions against violations of the same, how do we exactly counter that when the protectors of the law themselves are found to be defaulters in this?
Okay, fine. We can go on discussing this, and I have a horrible feeling we're going to go on discussing this for a period of time until we try and get some sort of answers and the violence actually goes down. Perhaps I'm going to get everyone, we are flat out of time on the show, 10 seconds each, one sentence from each of our panelists. What is the one thing that you think needs to be done immediately so that the levels of violence and the number of deaths comes down? One thing which needs to be done. Avik Saha, can I start off by asking you one thing that you think needs to be done immediately?
Strong law, mob violence, lynching needs to be strongly stopped immediately, and all political parties and groups and denominations must come together.
Okay, strong law needed. Alison, one sentence from you.
It needs to be strongly condemned by the ruling establishment right now, because and with no caveats about animal protection or anything. Mob violence in toto needs to be fully condemned, and that's it.
Condemned
And
by the ruling establishment.
proper action by the state.
Sir, my humble submission and prayer is that stop beef culture in India in any manner. The all violence would be stop itself.
So you are saying that all mob violence is because of beef culture. So you yourself are linking it entirely with cattle smuggling.
I'm not saying what kind of perception is made around that. So because it's a little bit, maybe it's a little bit contribution.
Okay, stop beef culture.
Strong enforcement of animal protection laws which will protect all animals, not just cattle, but all animals against needless violence and cruelty. India is ahimsa, and we need to live up to the traditions of our forefathers, including the founder of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi.
Okay, one last line from you.
Strong enforcement of laws against cow slaughter, that is important. And then also strong enforcement of laws against people who kill other people, with an added caveat that if the Congress party, whom I think Mr. Poonewala represents, is so interested, it's interested in ensuring, it feels that cow slaughter should be, that cow slaughter laws should be repealed, then it should go ahead and do it in Punjab. Otherwise, it should not speak in a folk tongue.
Okay, fine. One line from you. I'm interested that, Raghav, you said at first have the law against stopping cow slaughter and then also have laws to stop the killing of humans.
Exactly. No, both of them should be enforced simultaneously.
Okay, fine.
a new law, but I want to say something else while ending this. I want each one of you to reflect that you guys are young guys, and most people caught in these incidences are between the age of 25 to 45. Why are young people using modern technology doing something so barbaric that happened in 14th century Europe, 18th century America? Is this the India we want? Is this the new India, or should we go forward? I want each one of you to reflect on this. Can we use modern technology to do barbaric acts? I think that's all I want to say. Everyone said what they had to.
All right, I think those are some interesting points for us to think about. And I think one of the overall comments that all of us need to accept is it's wrong to kill somebody, to murder somebody. That's a generality. And it's particularly wrong if it's been happening with any sort of a justification, no matter what the justification is. WhatsApp message, this person's a witch, this person's a transgender, this person belongs to XYZ community. I think we should try and end the justifications and the excuses and do whatever we can to make sure that not another person is actually murdered by mobs. That's really not the image or which we should have for India. It's certainly not the idea of India that any of us should want to do or aspire to. That's it on The Big Fight. We'll be back next week.